We often speak about the power of art, but what about the power of public art, in particular, a powerful presentation? I'm delighted to be joined today by Carmen Zella, the curator of Luminex, but also a wonderful founder and creator of Now Art, which is a public art group, to say the least.
Yes, we're a public art agency based in Los Angeles. We're doing work across the country, but super happy and proud to call Los Angeles our home. So,
now, when you say public art, what is that? How do you define that? I mean, is it just a picture, a sculpture, a mural? What is it that you feel is necessary to be public art?
Public art is about access. So, and it's not that it needs to be a sculpture or it doesn't need to be a mural. And that's kind of what our organization is constantly pushing. I'm like, I have a background in theater. And so you have the proscenium stage, you have the proscenium arc, and then you blow past that, right? That's like Peter Brook. It's like the open space. So our open space is in the public. It could be anything. Some of my favorite public art, there's this one piece where there was a pianist. He was floating on a glacier in the Arctic, playing his piano. It was recorded, but that's his public art piece. We have public art that's in, nature. There's a lot of landscape art that the landscape art is seen in photography, and then it goes away. It dissipates back into nature. So public art is kind of a statement. It's something that's not defined in a gallery or an institution, but it's really out there for people to be able to access. But they can access it in different ways, through documentation, or it could actually be, something that they experience themselves.
So it's a very exciting realm to move into that space in regards to your definition of public art, because I think I probably know a bit of a more of a traditional background where somebody has commissioned something that is in place for people to enjoy, like a Richard Serra, which is out in front of the Segerstrom Center for the Arts, or even someone like Osamu Noguchi, who has done beautiful public art around the country and the world. But now this very energetic version of public art, and you have captured that with Luminex. And Luminex is something that Los Angeles has enjoyed now for 3 incarnations. Luminex being something light-based.
Light in the darkness.
Exactly. So if somebody has not seen a Luminex, how did it begin? Why did you want to do it? And what have people been able to enjoy?
Yeah, I love this question because, so Luminex really, I'm from Montreal, and why I love it is because it's the intersection of art and technology. So you see the X at the end of Luminex, and it's that intersection that we're really kind of expressing in this particular exhibition and iteration. And why I'm mentioning Montreal is because it's a very well-known center for art and technology existence. And so during COVID, all the galleries were shut, people were not accessing art. And humanity needs to thrive when we have the expression of art brought back into our streets, and the artists being able to start to inspire people, capture moments of time. And so when we released Luminex, it was an idea that Paul Chavez, he's a technical director at Arup Industries, he and I really wanted to be able to bring something into the streets of downtown Los Angeles and, break it up, be able to say that art is still existing in this city, even when people were all in their homes. And so we did it in a safe way. We had it outside and we were able to project these pieces. So there's a lot of light-based festivals that happen all around the country, internationally actually. And the distinguishing factor of Luminex is that it's an art exhibition. We're really, looking to the artist to create the content. We want to have it content rich. We want to be able to have conversations and have a level of curation that's brought into the streets. Los Angeles is the creative capital of America, And, it's always this, innovator in that way. And so that's why it's a perfect home for a project like this.
It has its challenges, I would imagine, for you as a curator to work in the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
How did you determine the best space and how this would work and how many artists you could include and what type of art could be created on that scale, with that scope, with that tech?
Yeah, well, it doesn't, thank you for asking that question, because it's not easy. That's why a lot of people are not doing public art, because it's very, very challenging. You've got all these barriers. You have to be able to access the property owners. You have permits that you have to get, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, since I've been working in Los Angeles for a while, I've made relationships and connections to be able to help with these kinds of activations to sort of bring them forward. But, this particular iteration, when I started working with Paul, originally, I have to be honest, I was thinking like, let's just do some guerrilla, like projector on the back of a bike, like ride around LA and just like, project.
Sure.
And I was really thinking like grassroots and kind of, but Paul has connections with Panasonic. He has connections with different production companies like Show Imaging that we've been so lucky who came in as sponsors, because they weren't doing anything. There was no concerts. There was no nothing. The parking lot owners were empty. So it actually really strangely created a stage for us to create such a monumental installation like Luminex during COVID. It really created an opportunity for us to be able to do something like this, because in the third iteration of Luminex, we have 10 installations, but things are back. Parking lots are really hard to get. People are busy, artists are busy. So it's become, increasingly more and more difficult. But because we seeded it and there's such a overwhelmingly positive response with this project, now we have the support. So the timing was actually kind of interesting there. Yeah.
So you have the practical things that you have to obviously accomplish, but then you
Yeah.
also have the artistic side of this.
Which
and
is the cool
artist,
part. Yeah.
that's the critical, that's
Yeah.
the core, that's the foundation. The artist that is able to utilize
Yeah.
this technology that I'm sure that they don't normally during their regular perhaps on a smaller scale. How did you know this artist, this work, this engagement that they are trying to accomplish would work on a grand scale? How did you merge those two things?
What we're looking for when we're thinking about an artist is we're looking at the portfolios and we're looking at the artist's work. We want it to be a diverse combination of like, what are they saying right now? Where are they at in their career? How can their work scale to like a 200-foot by 60-foot size? But it's also like, how can we make every single one of these installations unique and incorporate mixed media? So when a viewer comes, the public comes and they're like, oh, what's this? There's a real pull, there's an immersiveness. There's an immersiveness automatically because the scale is so big that you're like, whoa, you're like inside of it. So Luciana Abad, she did a waterfall that people just went inside. They ripped their COVID masks off and they were like, woohoo! The video projection was on them. They were in it. And so we really want to be able to have these moments where people because of the scale and also because there's performance, there's acoustics, they really feel like there's kind of a mixing of the buildings and the artwork in the downtown environment that just meshes and it almost envelopes them and gives them the cadence of freedom, the cadence of an emotional response. In the meantime, they're within their community. It's really the most beautiful moment in Los Angeles to have this shared moment with this incredible art, that you're beside your neighbor, you're beside an elderly woman with a dog, you're beside a teenager, you're beside a family, you're beside a houseless person, you're beside someone who speaks English, doesn't speak English. It's like all there. our city is incredible, and it's so beautiful to be able to hold hands with other people and observe art and just be in this unified moment where we're just all there together. It's super cool.
What's it like for you walking through all
It's
of
the
this?
best thing ever. It's the best thing ever because it's like, it's a dream to be able to, because it's fun for me too. So it's kind of like you're setting the stage for something that you want to be able to have happen in your city, and putting the amount of effort and energy into something that you want to see happen. Just think about it. Like, if everybody did a little something of what they'd want to see a difference of in the city, imagine like the changes that would take place. It would be pretty incredible. So it's kind of like that for me.
You've mentioned a few of the artists, but I think it's
Yeah.
worth talking about the art, more about the artists and the art that they create.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the diversity, you mentioned the different type of mediums that they work with, and you mentioned what their message might be or what their hope and intent might be. And you have utilized a few of the artists multiple times over because they are here and do rich work. But they're very different in what they do, whether they utilize the internet, whether they utilize sound, whether they're so. It would be great to hear a little bit about the artists themselves.
Yeah, I love talking about them because it's like the artists are really, that's the focus. That's why this is an exhibition. It's about the artists. So we've got artists like Sarah Rara. Sarah's work is based on gender. And not all of their work is based on gender, but the piece at Luminex is based on gender, and it's looking at orchids, and they're basically looking at orchids through the lens of a prism. But when Sarah's work is installed, it's about the way they see, the way that they approach the work is really through their words. So there's closed captioning on this installation because their words in association with the images are really, that combination is really what creates that big sync into the content of the work. And that in itself is extraordinary. We've also got artists like Jojo Abbott. Jojo Abbott is African American, and Jojo Abbott's work is very performative. Jojo Abbott's work is very spiritual. Jojo Abbott's work is very, it takes you on a journey, like on a spiritual journey, through the visualizations of themselves as performer inside of the work on a large scale. So it's very feminist, and it's very spiritual, and it has that kind of a cadence. Then you have Alan Nakagawa, who's an acoustic artist, a sound-based artist. And Alan Nakagawa's work is both physical as well as auditory. So you're sitting in these seats and there's like an actual visceral hum that is going through you because Alan is creating a third space, a third architectural space of sound. He's using sound that he picked up at the Sagrada Familia as well as Watts Towers, because he was looking at the spires and wondering, what is the acoustic vibration of both of these spaces that have like a synergistic harmony? And then he's meshing that together in this third acoustic space that you're physically audibly a part of, right? These are all pieces that are
just the idea of being over at the Watts Towers, and it's a jaw-dropping visual experience. But to even think of that it would have any kind of sound resonance,
sonic resonance.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
Yeah, exactly. And so there's this like sonic capturing, and then you have Rafiq, who's really vanguard. He is basically like spearheading this whole like understanding of AI and art. He just announced Dataland, which is this incredible museum project that he has at the Grand that's going to be opening in 2025, and it's an entire museum of AI art. And so he's like reminding us that as a creator, we don't need to be afraid of AI. We can still harness its power, because it's not like you just flip a switch and then all of the artwork happens. There's so much thought into the assimilation of images, photographs, and he's also creating an entire ethical understanding of how to approach AI and create AI art that is rewarding the original content creators. So there's a whole like scope of how he creates his landscapes and his artwork. Completely fascinating. And on and on and on.
So that's the thing that we were talking a little bit about before we started rolling the camera, is that the whole concept of AI in a creative venue, there's a certain element of fear that it's going to be plagiarism, or that we're going to lose independence and individual identity because of the amalgamation of all of these different sources. But based on what you're learning with the artists, there's a completely different way to approach this whole concept.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm still, I have to be really honest, I'm learning about it as well. Technology is something that, I go through extremes, right? It's like unplug everything. Let's just go back. I still have my typewriter, like, let's do this. And then there's this other response to it, which is like our Alice Bucknells of the world, our Rafiq Anadol's of the world, our Nancy Baker Cahill's of the world, that are saying, we don't need to be afraid of technology, because the technology has always been in this silo, at least for me as a creator, where it's like, well, they could never, creativity is always going to be that, marker of the human spirit and the human essence that computing is never really going to encroach, until it does, right? Until it starts to, get into these other areas that are really, I think, destabilizing, because we always think about, content creation and creativity as something that could never be done by computers. But you and I could be recreated as AI figures, and we're seeing that more and more often, where there's these videos that are released, or like all of this, right? It's incredible. And so that's where art is going with these artists that are from Los Angeles. That's why it's so important to do projects like Luminex, because we're sharing with the general public works of art and artists' work that are internationally recognized and renowned. Why not? And then, it's pretty cool.
You're talking about the art world in Los Angeles. And of course, a lot of people think that if you're going to talk about the entertainment industry, you can talk about Los Angeles. But if you're going to talk about the art world, you have to talk about an East Coast city and or a European city. But are you watching a literal shift in dynamic when it comes to that, on cutting edge art, or just art in general?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny because, Art Basel, which is, people go to these exhibitions and locations and they're buying art, like Los Angeles artists' work, and Los Angeles artists are internationally acclaimed and renowned, and the celebration of them here at home has always been a little bit of an uphill battle, with gallerists and fairs and things like that. We've got a major repository of art galleries here now, and it's continuing to grow. But the talent pool that is in Los Angeles as a recognized place is kind of, it's not a best kept secret, because it's not a secret anymore. But I think it's really a defining factor for this city. We are the creative capital of America here in Los Angeles. And it's not just in music or in film or entertainment. It's really in fine art.
And the whole idea of contemporary art, or formerly known as modern art, is it difficult for people to access, and does something like Luminex allow people to have an introductory opportunity that maybe they will follow up on?
Downtown is so rich, right? It's not just, West Hollywood or Mid Wilshire that has like all of these institutions. Downtown is the Broad. We've got Mocha. We've got, there's LACMAs. There is such a rich distinction that downtown is like growing, and now we have Dataland as this like incredible like place to be for creative culture. So yeah, I mean, I think that what Luminex does is not everybody is going to go to these museums even if they're free, right? Let's be honest. Like, you can have free museums, you can have all of that, but the barrier of entry for a lot of people is still, you know, these are places that are, you know, have the reputation as being a little bit more formal. People don't think they're going to get it. So Luminex really breaks that open, right? And it says, okay, this is still serious art in the streets, but it's being brought to people so that they can have that moment of intersection and that moment of inspiration, where hopefully at that point, they're going to leave forevermore being curious, at least, about like, you know, breaking that barrier of entry and starting to go and see museums, understanding this rich culture that we have with artists and artwork in Los Angeles, and really like digging in to see what else is out there. This was super cool. Like, I want to know more. That's the big goal. That's the hope.
The big goal and the hope, because you talk about the healing power of art.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that I've learned about you. But
yeah.
also that understanding, because you mentioned some pretty sophisticated intent with these artists that may be subtle to those that have not experienced it, or may be absolutely completely lost on anybody that's never even seen it. So how are you, as the curator, gathering all of these wonderful artists, creating this amazing exhibition all over the country, not just here with Luminex, but everything that you do? How are you getting the actual intent of the artist and
the
messaging out?
Yeah. So it's, you know, for me, it's more important that they are inspired.
Okay.
Actually, for me, it's, and this is for me, I'm not speaking on behalf of any one of the artists necessarily, but the concepts of their artwork has many, many layers. But the concepts start with, you know, giving them sort of like a moment where it's like, what is this? What am I looking at? And whether they walk away feeling like that was really cool, but they don't know why. This was really incredible, but even just because of the pure scale and the visual content of it all, that's a win, you know, because that level of inspiration will drive further curiosity down the line, where they'll start to feel a little less intimidated about art. Whether somebody, you know, gets it and understands, you know, all of the deeper content and the concepts behind each of the pieces is not really the goal. That's not our goal at all. My goal at all.
Well, I was going to say, and to that point, all of us who appreciate the power of art, the healing power of art, the awe-inspiring power of art, are constantly in a situation in which we're defending the word art at large. Why it has value to the everyday person, why it has value to humanity at large, and why it has value to our lives. And so when you're faced with those questions, I have my own answers. What is your answer to that? Why should we bother with this in the first place?
Because art is the harmonizing part of humanity that brings us all together. It's what defines us against all other species that we create art. It's how we look back in history and understand where we come from, you know, and how we got there. It's really that moment where we are lifted beyond just the everyday, you know, momentous, like putting one foot in front of the other, watching the clock type of life. It's what gives ourselves purpose. And, you know, art is that big scope. It's music, it's dance, it's, you know, it's everything. And so what I love about the work that we do at Now Art is that we bring all of those different types of media together in, you know, we get artists that are multidisciplinary, and they bring it all to you in these incredible installation moments. So, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you were a child of theater, but do you remember the first moment in which art actually had some sort of impact on you? Was it in the theater or was it somewhere else? I mean, where did you wake up to the whole idea?
Yeah, so the moment that I was like, gosh, this is the best thing ever is when I was working in London, England, and I went to this exhibition of De La Guarda, there was a theater festival, and so this Argentinian troupe from Buenos Aires was doing this beautiful theater piece. I'd heard a little bit about like what it could be, but it was in a dock area, and they did this piece called Puerto Villa Villa. And so all of these people, this was in the 90s. So, going to the theater, everyone's dressed up. We all went into this warehouse at Trinity Western Docks, and the lights went off. Everyone is standing, there's no seats. So we're just in a room with the lights off, and all of a sudden there was this explosion on the ceiling of light and all this activity, and all of the performers were on bungee cords. And then they started coming through the ceiling, and the ceiling was paper, and it was just this it was raining on people. So it was physical theater. And I realized at that moment, because I was working at Peter Brook's theater, which, he was a big influence for me, the power that, theater can have, and it doesn't need to just be confined to a stage. It doesn't need to be, sort of formalized in this particular way, because what really left the impression was not just the awe-inspiring physicality of what they were doing, but the reaction of the audience.
Oh, yeah.
After this show was like, these women that came like wearing furs, and like these men that were all dressed up, like literally skipping away after this, theater piece, so impressed and just left with this moment of inspiration. And at that moment, I was like, there's really something to this, because it was it left a huge impact and shifted my life.
Well, you're in the right space, as you mentioned, because of the dynamism that Los Angeles provides for creativity.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's a space for this with all of the massive upcoming events that are taking place in Los Angeles? I'm thinking of the Olympics, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're lighting the birthday candles. Because what I think is really important is for us to be able to showcase like what the city has the potential to do and what we're all about. And so I feel like there is going to be this tremendous, international crowd that's coming to watch these incredible games. But we can also at the same time host them and be able to share like the culture, the richness of the culture that exists within our city, in all the areas, downtown, but be able to, have these incredible moments of public art experience to be able to bring people to different areas of the city as well, and have art be that pull, have art be that, carrot that brings them in, and then be able to host them and showcase the richness of our culture. Yeah.
Well, if people want to learn more about Now Art, or you, or the charitable arm of Now Art, NXT, or anything that's happened with Luminex, past, present, what's the best way for them to find out?
Yeah, the best way would be going to our website, which is nowartpublic.com. They can also find us on Instagram, which is nowart_LA. But yeah, it would be really great for people to reach out and hopefully, participate. That's what our whole goal is with our 501c3, is that we need to be able to do this as a community and as a city and all participate in building these great art experiences for the public.
Well, I'm sure you are inspiring a lot of people just like you are inspired. So thank you so much, Carmen. It was great to chat with you.
So great to have you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.